Hey guys, in this video we've got the Bezgar HM124 again, and this one is going to get an upgrade here. And what it is this one's had really nasty shock problems as far as the spring tension goes, and we found a fix for it that seems to work pretty well. For this isn't a very heavy car, guys. It's pretty light and it's not all that big, 12 scale, but at the same time the springs they gave us on it were so stiff that it would bounce, and when it would bounce there was no control in it. And the problem is when you have so much pressure here to where the shock doesn't allow it to travel the way it's supposed to, it adds extra pressure against the hinge pin. So in this we're going to show you what the fix is. This isn't going to be a great big long video. This one we're just going to run over really quick so you can see what we did to correct the problem here. Check this out. Okay, so when we first got this car, we went over everything and had a good look at it, and I hope you saw that video. If you haven't seen that one yet, that one's going to be in the description up here on top. There'll be a link right up there, and that'll lead you to the first video so you can see everything that came out of the box, everything you get with this car, and you'll also see what we did with the shock absorbers. And what it was it bounced so badly that we wound up changing the oil and loosening the springs as far as they could go, and this is what they are from the factory. And these are so strong, these springs, that it just doesn't do anything when it hits, and it puts a lot of extra strain on the hinge pins, and that's not a good thing. The shock springs need to be as soft as necessary to handle the weight of the car only. These things here, they would handle 10 scale with no problem, because they're so tight and the shocks are so short that there's no real adjustment in them. All you can do is tighten them up and make them even worse. So that was a problem. Now, we found these very same shocks, but for a different scale model, even a different brand, but they still buy the same shock barrel. So the same shock exactly, lighter springs for the smaller gauged car. And these are made by Racer's Edge, and there will be a link in the description down below for where to get these. But they have a really nice light silver spring on them that do the job. Now what we wound up doing on this is we swapped all the springs over. Now you'll notice that the springs are silver now, and they're a lot smaller, but for the weight of the vehicle they handle really well. Initially when we dropped this, it bounced really bad, but now when you drop it, it sticks. So now it sticks where it's supposed to. It's a little bit bouncy in the back, but not too bad. And we did up the oil. We're putting this stuff in here, and it's 70 weight, which is 900 CST. This is what we're using in them now, and they're not very big shocks, so you got to make sure and bleed that air out of there just right. And when you put them together, when you tighten these up, make sure you have it collapsed so there's no air in there at the top. You want to have a little bit of a gap in the top. When you put this down, it has a rubber gasket in the top that's bowed in some. That is to separate the air from the oil so you don't get foaming problems. That's perfect. When you collapse this, you'll push this rod all the way inside. It'll take up as much space as possible inside the shock absorber so you get your oil levels right. When you go to tighten this down, it'll spill a little bit of that extra oil out, but the cap will hold just the right amount. And now it works like it's supposed to. This just has the wrong spring size on it. So jumping it to 70 weight made a big difference on that, and lightening the springs made a big difference too. But there's one more thing I want to tell you about these, and what it comes down to is when you sit this on the ground now with these lighter springs, and I'm really looking to get just a little bit heavier ones for the back here, but it crouches just a little bit when you drop it. But we're going to take this out and we're going to run it a little bit and let you see how the handling is on it and how different it is from what we did initially. And that's all good things. It should be a good repair. It seems to work really well, and we'll give you a bounce test with both versions. We have the initial version. We'll show you the bounce test on that, and then we'll show you how that bounces when it comes down, and you'll be able to judge for yourself. Okay, so all that being said, we've got a battery charged up and it's in the car and everything is ready to go. The radio checked out good, And now we're going to take it out and see what this thing's made of. We're not going to hard bash this one, guys. This one's going to be set up for what we want to use it for. A lot of it's going to be driveway, sidewalks, and stuff like that for the grandkids, but it's still really fast for something of this size. So this should be pretty cool. Let's get this thing out and see what it can do with the new setup. Check this out. So you already know this thing is fast, and it's pulling a little bit in the corners at this point. It's definitely a little tougher to drive with that soft suspension in the rear. The front seems to be handling good. It's getting good cornering and whatnot. But when you get on the throttle, it seems to tricycle a little bit, which pulls you into a corner and makes it harder to correct for. So this is a bit soft. It's definitely a lot more touchy now. It does squat down in the back quite a bit, and you can see it pulls in the corners. I don't think this is going to do what I want it to, so we're going to have to try something else. Okay, so that experience was a little lackluster, and you know, I had a feeling that could be the case. You know, I have the same springs front and back, and they're really a little too light for the car in the rear because of the motor weight and the battery and all that stuff. It does seem to sag in the back a little bit, and it does let the car swap ends on the sides a little bit, left to right, and when it shifts to one side or the other, it takes a little weight off the inside tire, it lifts a little, it tricycles, and it pulls harder in the corners. And this does not have sway bars, so there's no way to combat that with those springs in the back. I really do like the way they're working in the front, however. So since we've got extra springs, we're going to do kind of a backwoods way to fix this. Now, I grew up in a small town where we had to fix stuff without having the proper stuff, and we learned how to make things work with what we've got. In this situation, I don't want to throw a bunch of money at this until I figure out what the right spring tension is going to be and where I can find the ones that fit these. So until we do that, just to get out and get to playing with this thing, the problem we have with the stock ones is it's already under tension. It's already compressed because the spring is much longer than the shock. So with the spring out of the shock, it's all of this long between the two. Now the problem with that is by the time you squeeze it down and put the keeper on it, it's under tension, and that's not a good thing. So what that means is it's already pulling as hard as it can, which means it's going to bounce because it'll push tension all the way to the top of that, and it doesn't give the oil a chance to dampen it at all. So we're going to go ahead and trim this down some, and this is a stopgap measure, guys, until we find the right ones for this. This is just a quick fix so we can get out and bash. You know, it's a cheap little car, and these things aren't expensive anyway, so we're going to go ahead and give it a sample. So we're going to show you how to cut these down some, try and figure out what the right distance is so that it'll ride properly. We'll put them back in the car, and we'll go back outside, and hopefully that'll solve the problem. So let's get back down on the bench, and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so now we've got them back on the car here, and we still have the silver ones up front, and these are the light ones, and they seem to work really good that way. However, the back ones, these are black now, and they're a bit shorter, so now they're not under load at the beginning, so they move a lot better for what the car is, and I suppose you could probably shorten all four and use the springs that are already on it. but I really do like the feel of these in the front, so I'm glad we grabbed those. The back ones feel a lot better now, so let's see how it runs. And that has a nice launch to it now. There we go. Nice. Oh, got a little out of pocket there. Here we go. Yeah, it doesn't push nearly as bad in the corners now. It's a lot more manageable. This is actually becoming quite a blast to play with at this point. Nice and controllable. Definitely a marked improvement over having the same springs all the way around. Excellent. Nice. I like the way it handles a lot better with this setup. That's cool. Oh, got a little out of pocket there. Go through the grass a little. That handled good. It's still not perfect, but it's definitely better. All right, so I'm glad that worked. You know, those springs, they were a little difficult to cut, and if you're gonna snip them, make sure you use a decent sized set of snippers. The small set I tried to use at the beginning, they did work, but they did take a little damage in the process. So what it is right here and here, we've got these, and these are the ones we use for most everything, and these are good wire snippers and they work really well, but springs are hardened. So these struggled a little bit and it did put a little damage in there. We had to get the file out and dress it out to get rid of that. That was unfortunate. We use these all the time. However, a little larger set like this went right through it without much problem. And when you go to bend those ends down so they don't dig into the shock, make sure you hold it with a set of pliers, because like I say, they're hardened material. It takes 2 sets of pliers to bend them down flush. So when you put the coil spring on, it sits flush against the collar at the top, and that sharp end isn't sticking up to dig into it. So that being said, you know, we only had to snip off a little bit, and what it comes down to is we took off 3 coils. So there's 3 coils, 1, 2, 3, and that seemed to work out really well. 70 weight on the oil worked out really nicely, and it does control a lot better. The shocks feel the way they should. Now the thing is, when you go to buy these, and here are the ones that we purchased, and they have the light springs on them. You only need to buy 1 set of these for the front if you want it to handle this way. You could try snipping all 4 first and see how it works. Be careful when you snip these, because you only have 1 shot at it. If you cut them too short, they're toast and you'll have to buy new ones anyway. However, when you get these things, they are really hard to begin with, and all you're trying to do is take the preload out of it. In other words, when you go ahead and adjust these down, you set the preload, which sets the ride height. This is already jacked all the way up, so that's it. I mean, I'm squeezing on that, and now it moves. That takes a lot of pressure, and that car doesn't weigh very much. So removing 3 coils from that lets it sit at neutral, and then you still have adjustment on your collar so you can adjust your ride height, and that works really well. So keep in mind, guys, if you're gonna buy a set of these silver ones, you only need to buy them for the front. They will not work for the back. All that behind us, I'm sure I'm going to hear about cutting springs in the comments, but like I said, we do what we have to with these things to get them running until we have the proper parts to replace them. At this stage of the game, this car was not expensive. It was a pretty inexpensive car to start with, and if you can just tune stuff that's there, you don't have to spend any money to do it. If I had to snap a rubber band around that to get it to work, I would do it, just so I could play with it and have a good time. That doesn't mean you don't need to do it right. It just means that you do what you have to with these. At the end of the day, these little guys, they're toys in the first place, and there's no right or wrong about it. If you like the way they handle and do what they do straight out of the box, and they make you happy, fine, let it roll. Do it just like that. But if you want to improve it some, don't be afraid to get in there and start tuning stuff to make it handle the way you want to. If you haven't already, guys, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. And if you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, I'm AJ with AJ Jam Studio saying, keep wrenching, guys.